We hope you're doing well, like always. Today, we want to continue our last time discussion. We also had some suggestions and comments from our followers. They told us that we need to push more on the last time topic. Um, the one that says, "Why are we here?" Our current status of our country, our current status of our country. She Today we have a guest, Zena. So we will first try to give him the stage. We'll hear what he thinks about why we're here, and then I think we'll go from there. Zena, why do you think limuntaina, or we didn't even decide what to talk? It's okay, you can talk in English, Amharic, or Tigrinya. بدستها لمندن ነው እዚህ ያለነው where are we here ብለን የምታስበው?
Okay, thank you, Sant. Okay, well, I believe the reason why we are here is because people are pursuing their own personal ambitions. But as a society, like other people, you should always keep the balance between the best interest of yourself and the best interest of the group you belong. Actually, this is not my idea. This is like, if you guys have seen the movie Beautiful Mind, John Nash said the idea of Adam Smith is limited. It's not complete. People should do the best interest of themselves. Is not complete. People should keep the balance between the best interest for themselves and the group or the circle they belong. So, person who asked, we belong to a group called Tagaru, and we've abandoned our collective existence as a Tagaru. We are totally consumed on our personal ambitions. Could be business, entrepreneurship, or different goals, personal goals. And we weren't really into piercing topics such as politics, cultural, social, different aspects of our collective existence. We've totally abandoned that. And the reason why we are here is because we never fully pay attention to those kind of essential issues of our existence.
So, very interesting points. Zain was mentioning really interesting points. I mean, from my point of view, I tend to see it. I tend to see it differently because it's one of the challenges in my life. I mean, originally, you can never tell where exactly your thoughts come from. You don't know where all of them originate. Is it, for example, there's a certain belief that you have in life that you follow every day. And it's very hard to tell where you got that belief from, right? Is it from your parents, from your upbringing, from the society, from the books you read, from an experience you went through at some point in your life? Or I don't really know. But one of the most challenging points in my life, one of the most challenging experiences is that how is it possible to put into consideration the safety of the group? Or instead of calling it the group, I think it makes it easier to understand when you say the other. For me, that makes more sense. So how is it possible to accommodate the belief of the other, the benefit of the other, without actually understanding what it is that's the best in the best interest of yourself? So in all of my relationships as well as my own personal experience as part of a group, it was one of the most challenging things. And so probably, Adam Smith's idea that you don't have to follow just the best interest of your own self, but also the group. It kind of makes sense at some level, but I don't know where that ends and where, the best interest of yourself ends and the best interest of the group starts. And probably, I believe, not the main, but, partly the reason could be the fact that I've been raised in two different places with somehow related common background, but a completely different one at the same time. And at the beginning of my moving from one place to the other, I wasn't accepted in both places. So I had this personal experience of not belonging to the group. group. When I was back in Nazareth, I was treated like a Tigrayan, for example, and then everybody would be like that Tigrayan guy, or at least if it wasn't said explicitly, I would at least feel it at a subconscious level. You would know that you're pointed out at that person, and whenever there is any kind of conflict anywhere in that place, then you would feel secluded. But then a few years later, I had to move to Tigray, and I was new there. I didn't speak Tigrinya very much, and everybody would call me the Amhara guy or the Oromo guy. And then at that age of life, you find it hard to decide or to know where you belong. And I believe this is not just my own experience, but it's the experience of many similar people who have had that kind of movement, especially during their childhood. So I am a bit um, against this idea of considering the best interest of the group. In fact, most of the time I find myself secluding myself from this idea of belonging to a group. And especially nowadays, this all thinking leads me to the fact that what's the point of grouping in the first place? What's the point of having a group? Is there such a thing called belonging to a group? These are the kind of thoughts that Zane's idea incited in me. Perhaps as we continue, I will also talk about the different points, perspectives I have regarding specifically the topic we talked about. But it's very interesting because it makes me ask these kind of questions. What do you guys think about this, or anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I think it's a very good point to raise in terms of an individual perspective of how we got here, how Ethiopia slash Tigray got here. Uh, but I see it in a different way, perhaps a little bit closer to how Aman may have posed it as well. Particularly in the fact that I think um, the way people have lived or the way we have lived is not uh, is not that it's individualistic or that it's self-centered. I think it's more to the challenge between aligning those two together of the collective ideology, the collective responsibility, and all that stuff, and then on the other side, the individualistic and how you're supposed to align yourself to certain things and choose the best for the best of yourself. I think that's where the difficulty lies in having a clear definition of those two things and then having to sort of align your life along those lines. And it's a difficult task, I think. And along the politics and along the whole shenanigans of this whole Ethiopia stuff that we have right now, it becomes quite difficult because if you're going with the collective mentality, then it brings about all this friction against each other, against people you might feel closer to rather than any other collective mentality you might have. For example, you might feel closer to other groups of people rather than a Tigrayan, for instance. And in that case, this collective mentality becomes much more difficult to deal with rather than having an individualistic perspective. So I think it's more on the sense that where do you draw the line and how do you live along with these two perspectives in life rather than being on the one side only, I think. So that's how I see it.
I think I share all of his view because I do agree with Zena, the part that we need to get involved. I'll also raise it as a question. Um, that like as individual, I do also agree like we have to work as individual and stuff, but at the same time, I also think it is one of the reasons that got us here, not necessarily in a group of Tigran or in a group of Amhara, but in general, the fact that we were not aware of the country situation. Like, I had no idea that we were going to be in war, for example. So it's just something news for me, like, as if I'm a foreigner. So that kind of separation from my own country, that makes me feel like I was supposed to be aware. If had I know all this information, maybe a little, maybe it would be a guide for me to where we are, how we get here, kind of. So in that sense, I would share Zaina's idea. Like, we need to be able to at least understand what's going on. But in terms of um, being in a group, that's also a bit I cannot swallow it as well, um, because then it will be more like in the interest of your in if I am like identifying myself in a certain group and then only focus on the interest of my group, it's most likely to create, or maybe not, but in a situation where right now I feel like it might create another friction with another group of people that they are working on the group's interest only. So in that way, then it makes me feel like maybe there has to be a way where we stay back and look at what everyone wants and then try to work accordingly instead of having to just focus on our group. I would say, um I will hear your reflections. I will also ask you, do you guys think um it has an effect the fact that we weren't involved? Should we just focus in our business, um in our everyday activity, or do you think it matters that we have the understanding, or that we should know about our country's status, what's going on, the political and everything? What do you guys think about that?
Okay. I think I understand the reflection from both Mary and Bisrat. I think as I try to understand, like, where is the draw line in the big question to like, I've been through a lot. Mara is trying to say, like, I've been through a lot, belonging to different places, like sort of different group. I don't even know myself which group I belong. Uh, by the way, that's like sort of a realistic situation. I can't deny that. But like, in democracy, it's a majority rules. Like, yes, there are certain people, uh, few exceptions, who have been to different places, different groups. Even there are people uh, who got born from different races or groups, and I understand those kind of exceptions. But like, we take the significant number. Like, after all, I'm not preaching sort of extreme viewpoints. I'm not saying let's destroy this, let's perish these people, let's attack this group. I don't like to start from those kind of mindsets. What I'm saying is, like, in terms of self-protection, like, you can protect yourself from being broke by working hard, making a lot of money, and you can uh, protect yourself on the group, the society belong from political attacks, military wages, and others. But sometimes we're like, actually, like, I don't even have a problem with people who are fully conscious, that who can stand and think. I don't even know which group I belong. Can you hear me, Sam? Like,
Yeah, we can hear you.
yeah, I don't have a. I appreciate these people. Like, if people are like standing and thinking their situation, trying to understand their environment, the consequences of their lifestyle, I don't have a problem with these people. My problem is with being like ignorant, like, total avoidance of a topic, an issue, because of your goal or your personal ambition. Otherwise, yes, sometimes it's very hard to draw the line. You see, for example, me, like, I can even like uh, tell you examples of my personal life. Maybe I may not be 100% even Tagaru, like, but after all, my base is humanity. I'm not gonna attack other groups, but I'm talking about self-protection, because currently we can't protect ourselves from a genocide, and partially we are responsible for it. I'm saying, like, I want to make myself responsible for not working on it because I was fully consumed by the personal goals. Of course, there is a group, by the way. Like, there is a group, but sometimes the group are gray. I'm sorry. I have a friend from Welkite, and he's a mixed, and sometimes we discuss on these issues, and he said, don't make us black and white. We're gray area. We don't know where we belong. We just want to live peacefully. And you have a point, by the way. Like, this sense of belongingness is not like black and white, but after all, there is like a ruling groups. Like, there's Tagaru, there's Amharu, and the people who belong to Tagaru, they should do on their Tagaru thing, and the people who belong to Amharu, they should do on their Amharu thing, and there should be a mutual respect. After all, we are like fighting ignorance. Like, no, there is no like enough reason to go into a genocidal war. Even currently, people are too ignorant to realize it, and part of it is because we never discuss and talk about it. So when I say I don't want to be misquoted, like, I'm not being racist. For that matter, I do have like friends from different races, but this is what I told them in my brutally honest way. Like, you guys are my friends, and you care about me, I care about you guys. But if tomorrow, if someone decides Tagar should be perished, you guys are not going to stop it. I'm going to die. So yes, just take it in terms of self-protection. Don't take it in terms of like, I'm not like sort of preaching extremism or racism. No, my baseline is humanity. We should be humans. We should care about humanity, but also we should work on the group we belong. And I believe in being strong, in being able to defend yourself. But I'm not preaching extremism or sort of racism. I hope you understand me.
Okay, I understand. I feel like this discussion had different layers. See, because there are a lot of things that we're raising. I feel like we're raising about, is it important that we need to know what's happening? ዜና አሁን ያነሳው ባለማወቃችን ነው። እኔ አሁን ኢንቮልቭድ ስላልነበርኩኝ ራሴን መጠየቅ እኔም ብዙ ጊዜ የምለው ነገር ነው። ማወቅ ነበረብን ምን እየሆነ እንደሆነ። ናት ነሰሰሪ እንደ ትግራይ እንደ ማርያም ምናምን ላይሆን ይችላል፣ ኦር እንደዛም ሊሆን ይችላል። ግን ስቴት ኦፍ አፌርሱ ላይክ ዋትስ ጎይንግ ኦን የሚለው ግን ዋሩ ሲጀምር ነው እኔ ኮምፕሊትሊ ዋትስ ኢትዮጵያ ፖለቲክስ ገና ከዜሮ የጀመርኩት ማለት ነው። ሶ እንደዛ መሆን ነበረበት ወይ ሁሌ የምጠይቀው ነገር ነው። ሶ ሜቢ ኢትስ ሶ ዳትስ አናዘር ኩዌስችን። ማወቅ ነበረብን ወይ? ኢንቮልቭ ባለማድረጋችን ነው? እውቀቱ ባለመኖሩ ነው? ሶ እንደ አንድ እንትን ነው ለምን እዚህ ሆነ የሚለው። ሌላ ደግሞ አይ ፊል ላይክ አሁን ዜን ካነሳው የማለት ግሩፑ because I'm also trying to raise a question to challenge መጀመሪያ ግሩፑ እንዴት ነው የተፈጠረው? or ይሄም ወደዛ እያስኬደኝ ነው ውስጤ። because if we're going to talk about why we are here የሚለው ትልቅ ጥያቄ ስለሆነ በውስጡ ብዙ ሌየር ይኖራል። አሁን ይሄኛው ኦልሬዲ ኦኬ ፌዴራሊዝም መጣኛ ጋር አይነን ተከፋፈለ and ከዛ በኋላ ያለ ግሩፕ ይመስለኛል። ከዛ በፊትም ነበረ በክፍለ ከተማ ምናምን ኦር በክፍለ ሀገር ነው ይባል ነው የነበረው ምናምን I think so it also leads me even ከዛ በፊት ራሱ what do we mean by group, what do we mean by belongingness, what do we mean by language, what do we mean by culture ወደዛ ይመልሰኛል ማለት ነው። so I'm not sure like የሆነ in my mind it's like የሆነ ላይን አለ የተከፋፈለ ነው። so መሀል ላይ ነው ያለ ነው። so before and after need but before I feel like we're not touching that. So I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I have a few points to raise on
Okay,
that.
interesting.
Yeah.
See.
Uh,
So, guys, I actually
okay.
see this as a racist point of view. It's actually a very beautiful point of view. I mean, if I tend to believe I belong to my own family, and if I want to have a certain sense of protection towards that group, that's completely understandable and healthy. Uh, Again, something that Mimi mentioned earlier is also Zaini had also mentioned it. I think I have a different view on that area. Like, could we have been any more informed about what's happening right now? I mean, just before 2 years ago or 3 years ago, did we have any idea? Should we have been more aware of the differences that we have as a country? And I was going a bit towards our past history as a country, and it made me think about the Derg time, and we all have this understanding, this common understanding of what Derg is and stuff that we've heard from the media and what it did. But the whole point is there was a horrible experience in our country for about 20 years because of differences within a country, because of two different groups, or even more than that. Like, they might also be like 5, 6 groups that were fighting with each other, and these differences were not able to be accommodated, and this fighting continued for more than 20 years. And we tend to look at it from one point of view, from the media, from what these people were telling us, from only one extremist point of view, that Derg is, that's a horrible group that needed to perish, and somebody strong came and made it disappear, and that's all we heard. But if you really think about it, if you give it a second thought, a third thought, you'd start to think, okay, there were people with different opinions at that point, one in power and one struggling for power. And then at the end of the day, those who came from a very humble beginning came to realize their victory and became the leaders again. But does that mean that the Derg regime was entirely horrible from the very beginning? Now that's a point of debate for, I mean, that's going to take us quite astray from what we started doing. But I believe there's a different way to look at it. We have had as a country this kind of differences for a very, very long time. Even it takes me back to a time called Zaman Masafint, probably 200, 300 years ago. I'm not sure exactly the timing, but that was a similar kind of experience. Like, there were too many powers struggling for power, and it was quite an experience for minimum of like 50 years, for example, right? And that's not a light thing to look at. So it's not. This is not the first experience as a country to go through this kind of disagreement. But there was, if we go even back from Zaman Masafin towards the time earlier, probably we would find a year or a time period in our history where everyone was living in harmony, having a common understanding, having a country. There was this sense of country and belongingness and togetherness. So we can't really decide because of what happened in a couple of years or in 3 years. We can't really decide, okay, this is happening because of this, because there are different perspectives to it. The grouping thing, I don't feel like it's wrong to have a group, or it's wrong to talk about this grouping stuff. But for example, let me give one example that came to my mind. The Americans are better than everybody else in the world right now. I mean, as we know, it's the leading economy, and we tend to think, the Americans are the greatest people in the world, or it's the greatest country. So we're referring to a group when we say that, right? And why is that? I keep asking myself, why is that we call the Americans great? Is it just because of the economy? If it's the economy, then how did they get to this point in history where they are the greatest in economy? And they, whether you like it or not, you don't have to mention a specific individual. You just say the Americans are great. And that's not how did they achieve it? Did they hold on to their group identity and try to create some sense of Americanness in their beginning? I don't think so. Instead, what they did was they tried to make their culture as accommodating as possible for others. I mean, look at what exists in America right now. Pretty much anybody from any part of the world can move there and consider himself American. And considering yourself American is not just about having bloodlines or roots in that country, but instead it's more about the amount of well-being that you're getting, the amount of freedom that the culture gives you, how much belongingness you would feel by how privileged would you feel for being called American? And we know that from our experience and from everything we see around us, we can see how everybody finds it to be like, you know, a really privileged thing to be considered an American. And I believe that's because of their accommodating culture, the ideas that they try to accommodate and give spaces, the openness of their culture, the opportunities they provided, the amount of freedom of humanity that they believed in, and the valuable technological advancements that they came up with, and all those sorts of things, you know. So when culture, when grouping is about, you know, protecting your identity or considering yourself, you know, a secluded part of the world, then it becomes more destructive, in my opinion. But instead, when it's about, you know, creating opportunities, making that identity open for accommodating more, then it becomes more of a power. So yeah, I don't know. There are, you know, many pointers. Let's see what you think about them, and we can clear it up, perhaps.
Okay, so I think the discussion is kind of directing towards history, and perhaps it might be important to make a note that most of the topics, the points that we discussed about, are probably discussed on a session or an episode we had that wasn't posted yet. We will post it in the future, but yeah, it's good to mention at this point, I think, because yeah, for the most part, what is to blame is our history. What is to sort of refer back and see what we did wrong, that's where we find it. It's our history. Um and I think, yeah, you pointed out a few things that are important to notice throughout our history, but the thing is, there is mostly never a time where there's no conflict throughout our history. I think it's impossible to find that sort of period in any countries or in our world's history generally, if unless you go back like 10,000 years or something like that, because it's we're naturally, of course, you might disagree on this, but typically we are territorial, and whenever situations of, you know, establishing a country, establishing a regime or something like that comes into play in our history, there's always an opposition to that. And throughout our history, you can mention one of our greatest notable parts of our history would be the Izana Saizana parts of our history, I think, the that era. And even in then, there were oppositions that will tend to say otherwise and will pose a different perspective into that history. And that is always the case for history, for Ethiopia's history specifically as well. And the Zemene Mesafint probably is a good example for that conflict, I think. And it's an indicator for how much Ethiopia is currently divided, you can say as well. Sort of, that's the time where a lot of those cracks were visible, and you can see them. And yeah, there are some good that you can sort of elaborate upon, even in the tough times that we've suffered, whether whichever group you're referring to, of course. It could be in Tigray, in the Tigray perspective, there is the Derg time where a lot of atrocities happened. And yeah, the other side might say otherwise. There were divisions that happened, and it's not conclusively the wrong of a certain part of the society or whatever. It's always possible to pose that question. I think that's part of history. There's always perspectives and how you see it. But it's I think it's important to just realize that this there are two sides of our history. There is where we can see the good sides of it, and then there's the bad side, and just take both of those on and try to learn from that. That's I think the way I believe that we should go about it. And from that, I think a lot of the wrongs that have been made throughout our experience in this conflict that currently that we're having is, I think, attributed to lack of proper understanding of our history. It's almost a cyclical blaming. That's basically how people understand his history, in my opinion. whenever you ask someone about a certain part of our history, the way they see it is whether to blame a certain group or not. That's usually how a conversation about history goes on, and that's not how we're supposed to see it. I think the learning from history should not be that. It should be that what, as a society, as maybe Ethiopians or even as Tigrayans, what did we do wrong, and what can we do better? That's how everyone should see it. And I think that is to blame, in my opinion, for why we are here if we're talking in terms of history.
Okay, okay, you guys are raising a very important points, different perspectives. Okay, I think we are drifting far from the question a little bit. Like maybe one point brings another point. It's perfectly normal. But I think the question is, why are we here currently? Like, okay, from history perspective, yes, maybe a lot of genocide times that are not recorded might have been occurred, but I think the question is correct. Why are we here? Like currently, we are a victim of genocidal regimes, and why are we here? Like I'm not saying like I'm not saying let's look the blame on someone else or something, but what I'm trying to what I try to say is like the reason why we are here is because we've never seen we have never seen us as Sanit mentioned earlier, like before the war we were concerned about our collective existence issue, and just because I don't know, like even the territorial uh, uh, scope of Ethiopia is like it has been variable throughout history. I don't know what the current Ethiopia has been this way for the past, well, 3,000 years, or was it different, or is it geographically changed, like, or like, of course, geography varies from time to time, but like, is Ethiopia completely changed or not? That's also another different question regarding to history. Like, I, I have this idea. Like sometimes when I discuss with my Amharic friends, the current Ethiopia is created by Emperor Minili, and like of course, land-wise, it's like the biggest the country gets. But like, I feel like we combine people who have like same culture, same background, same history. I don't know. It's like I'm not a history expert. I might be wrong, but I feel like if the Amhara, the Eritreans, and maybe the Somalians or the Djibouti or the Tagari, if they were a country like they could have developed, and the southern part of the country could have been also in a better place, better off than what's currently. Like even Tagaro before we were like pro Ethiopia, we were there with Ethiopia, we were protecting Ethiopia. Like there is no any kind of accountability. The Tagaro didn't defend Ethiopia or like failed from defending Ethiopia like in history. But what I'm saying is like the very understanding of a nation, like it's not the current geography. Like can't take the current geography and talk about a country. So people have been through a lot of fighting, a lot of struggles because they feel they belong in that kind of place or a country. And this is like you can't say like this is not maybe like a certain group with a significant impact, like sort of fighting and change regime. This is not something to be taken like as a small thing. It's because like these people who have fought for like decades, 2 decades, close to 2 decades, toward their freedom, their rights, or their comfort, so to speak. Like you can't say these things are like the the desires of few individuals. This is something big. There is something corny about the architecture, or I don't know how to put it, of the country, we're not comfortable. So there are like ideologies that should, different ideologies that should resolve difference in the country, but still that's not enough. So the reason why we are here is not is because we didn't come with a correct solution to we didn't come with a correct solution to the existing problems. So like there should be like even some scholars suggest that there should be some kind of rearrangements to solve the East Africa issue. That there is too much war in this part of Africa. So one of the things is because like there is some kind of forced grouping. People are grouped into a thing that they don't belong to their home unless they are ruling. Because when you rule, you are the one who's setting the rules and everything that's good for you or by far works for you. So unless you are ruling this place is not your home. And it's practically it's because like when Qatar was ruling, we were striving in terms of economy, in terms of education, in terms of a lot of things. We were by far good. But once we lose the power, look what happened to us, passing through a very horrific, active genocide. And this comes like I feel like I don't belong in this group called Ethiopia is not where I belong. Maybe I have some other groups where I belong specifically, and that's Tagaru. So the reason why Tagaru failed to defend ourselves, and this underline the word protection. Like I like to protect myself. I don't like to other people, but I even like to protect myself in terms of conflict avoidance. You know, like that's a basic strategy. Even like in terms of military strategy and others, like conflict avoidance is the best strategy. Look, if Tigray was armed and well protected for a while before 3 years, there wouldn't be war. The reason why we are in a war is because of some can I say nonsense justice. You know, like for example, the people of Tigray, they see the Eritreans as their brothers. Well, a brother is a brother, but even a brother can't kill a brother. So you should be well equipped. You should do all kind of relationship in terms of principle, even with your brother, with anyone. There should be some kind of. This is good for all sides, by the way. Like, look, the current people that are responsible, the current leaders that are responsible for genocide, that they're not going to go with it easy. Like, there will be a time where this history will haunt them like forever, and it's not a good thing even let alone for the victims, even for the people who commit genocide. So when I say self-protection, it's like I want you guys to see in terms of like conflict avoidance, and to avoid a conflict, we should be active participants, and not only in our personal ambitions or personal goals, but in the group where we belong. We should be strong. Look how the Jews protect themselves against Kanye West's late tweets. Like they are the most powerful and strong people in the world. Look what they did. They banned the guy from the billionaire list. Like it's just a tweet. I don't know. It's just a tweet. But look, like these people, they are the most educated people than Kagame. They are like the most by far richer, the most powerful people, not only than Tagar, but like the most group in this world. So you can't say like is there a group like it can be philosophical and this kind of things. But just because the Jewish people became strong, that doesn't mean the world is became a worse place. They are protecting themselves from kind of Nazi attacks. I would like to dream a world where there is no Nazi stories. I dream a better world. So, like there is a group, of course, and the grouping should not be used to, to cultivate racism or other extreme viewpoints or perspectives. But like to protect ourselves, we should realize there is a group, And as a Tagar, we have failed to see that there is a group for us, other than Ethiopia. And look where we are. Like, I can't even call my mom. And I'm not like complaining or like
Yeah.
passing a lot of. I don't even need any kind of sympathy. Like I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me. I've passed like those kind of stages. I'm like dumbfounded, and like this is too much to take. And I feel responsible for not protecting my mom. And the reason I didn't protect my mom is not, well, first of all, I'm not referring myself, like I'm also referring Sant, I'm also referring Nahari, or like Bisra. All of us are responsible individually because we were working together to protect ourselves, our family, our society, our community, or in general the group we belong. So let's not hate it. We're not like separating ourselves. I don't like to put grouping in terms of stuff. Look, the Jewish people, they're like they protect themselves, and they are like a good force for the world. They have changed the world for a better. We can list examples how the Jewish people changed the world. And I think like let's be realistic, and people need to be very honest, like even like at the cost of being labeled racist or narrow mindset, or like we should be very honest and stay loyal to our roots. So there is a Tigray who has been like 4 years. Maybe the name could have been changed, but Tigray is a very like a good people, a good history, a long history, proud people, and maybe poor currently, but at once they were like superpower. So I see it. I see the positive in these people. I would love to fight and do anything to protect these people. Even like if I didn't belong in this group, like So yes, there is a group where we belong, and the group where we belong should be used for a good cause, of course.
I think በጣም አሪፍ ሀሳብ ነው ያነሳው ዜና but I was thinking I agree with you by the way አሁን ይሄ but I feel like that's more about የካረንት ሲቹዌሽኑ ብቻ ሃይላይት ያደረገ መስሎኛል እና do you think ultimately እሱ ነው ማለት the deeper problem ትግራይ ስትሮንግ ሁና ቢሆን አርም ቢኖራት ምናምን እንደዛ አይሆንም ብለን የምታስበው because I'm also thinking ሌላኛው ግሩፕስ እሺ የበለጠ አርምድ ቢሆንስ do you think that's the ultimate solution ወይ ደግሞ do you think እንደዛ ቢሆን ኑሮ አንገባም ብለህ ነው ወይ የምታስበው ብዬ እየመጣልኝ ነው in my mind because we can also refer back to Russia and Ukraine if we're going to talk about being armed የመሆን የሁለቱም or because for me I'm thinking like it's beyond that the people need to agree or to come to the understanding that it's not possible to survive in a safer way while you're killing the others so እንደዚህ ይሄ ሲጀመር the fact that you are like እኛና እነሱ አይነት ሆኖ if they are not እንትን ካላሉ እኛ መኖር አንችልም ወይ እነዚህ ካልሆኑ መኖር አንችልም አይነት ከዛ ማይንድሴት መውጣት እንዳለበት ultimately for me it's all about the way people perceive things rather than strong ብንሆን ኑሮ ከሚለው ማለት ነው so it's more for me the understanding of the people ሼር የሚያደርጉት እዛ ኔበር ሊሆን ይችላል or አንድ ካንትሪ ሼር የሚያደርጉት it's the understanding in the narratives that lead የሚያደርጉ ፑት የሚያደርጉላቸው ይሄ awareness ከሌላቸው the fact that the govern የሚያደርገው ፓርቲ የሚጠቀምበት አለማወቃቸው ይጠቀሙበታል እና ይሄ ነው ትልቁ ሼር የሚወስድብኝ ለእኔ one of the problems ብዬ የማስበው ማለት ነው but I was thinking ዜና ሌላ ግሩፕ አሉ እንበል ኦኬ ትግሪያንስ አሉ ሌላ ግሩፕ ደግሞ አሉ አምሐራ ሊሆን ይችላል ኦሮሞ ሊሆን ይችላል የተለያየ ሶ አሁን ትግራይ ላይ የተፈጸመ ያለው ከብዶኝና እኛ ሳድገነው ቢሆን ልልፈለኩና ከበደ ይመጣ what if it was
what do you mean እኛ አድርገነው ቢሆን
what if the roles were reversed what if it was ከኛ ላውጣው because I'm being emotional when I bring it to myself እኛ አድርገነው ስል እየከበደኝ ስለሆነ let me say ሁለት የተለያየ ግሩፕ አሉ ኤ እና ቢ ኤ ላይ ጆኖሳይድ ፈጸመ ኤስ ቢሆን የፈጸመው አይነት ስሜት ነው ያለኝ አሁን ማለት ነው so because I'm thinking like if we're thinking in a manner of making sure that group is interest only kone it's inevitable that the roles reverse ሊሆኑ አይችሉም ልንል አንችልም so that's also a question for me so then I refer back to okay so then is the deeper problem not being strong enough ways it's actually about the understanding of the coexistence so what እፈልጋለሁ ማለት ነው so what do you think
ኩስኸላ ዶ አዋተለሁ
yeah sure
ሓንቲ ኩስኸላ ብጣዕሚ ኢምፖርታንት መሲላ ስለዝተርእየት I mean Zeni everything you're saying it all makes sense it's very reasonable ንኸተስፋሕ ታይላይ ኣመን መሲልኩም any idea you can plant it somewhere it's just an idea I'm not even talking about any physical object an idea you can plant it somewhere make it grow and then you can make sure that it grows to the point where it looks like the only truth እና ሓሳብ ሲ ተተኺሉስ ሓቂ ይኾን ድሕሪ ግዜ ግን ተሓቂስቱ እዩ ማለት እኮ ይኾነን after ሓሳብ ንሳ ስለዝተሰርሐ ግን ነዊሕ ግዜ I mean for a moment we've been thinking the Tigrayan people are the same as the Eritrean people I mean I don't exactly remember the exact relationship of those people 500 years ago 600 years ago I don't know how it was but I feel like there might be a time when these people were considered one in the same just like the same way we tend to think now حنت تقراي تبهر حنتي ideal حنت عدلا إلا نحسو كلناس it was in the same way the Eritreans had the same roots and origins and belonging to the Tigrayan people and now look at how we feel about the difference between these two people we feel like we're different country not just that but also two enemy countries to each other I've heard many people in Tigray talking a lot of stuff about the Eritreans and I've heard Eritrean people talking a lot about the Tigrayan people now this difference has become so real through years and years of working on an idea and this same idea is working I see it like this same idea is working right now to make those differences greater and if you keep working on an idea if you keep putting things into it then it's definitely going to grow into something real maybe Mimi if you want to mention something about those differences that happened between those people advocating currently for stopping a Tigrayan genocide even amongst those people what makes you sure that there is no real difference amongst those people what makes them feel and think as one right now is just the fact that they're being victims at the same time but when this is all over then this sense of being one is going to go all away and what makes us sure that this Tigray identity will continue to exist after this genocidal history is over or something like that so maybe this is just trying to look at it from a bigger perspective or probably a bit more ideal than what's really happening right now what's urgently needed at least we can make it part of our thinking process that's how I feel
Yeah, the way I kind of understood what Zen was talking about is it's a bit more pragmatic, it's a bit more practical, and it's a bit like the words that you mentioned involved protection. I think you emphasized that, and yeah, a bit on the practical side, like what is happening now and what can I do now to sort of protect my people, sort of. That's the perspective I kind of see. And I think it's logical to think that way, of course, because, yeah, if you're cornered, that is indeed what you would think. If you're a group of people cornered in a certain situation, the only thing you can think about is how can I get out of that situation or how can I fortify that situation, that position that I'm in. And the history of the Jewish people exactly specifies that, exactly sort of exemplifies that, because their history involves being cornered basically from every part of the world. And indeed, they landed in a certain position where they are probably surrounded with a lot of people that are against them. And that is mostly caused by external factors, external entities like Western countries being involved in that situation, and also the sort of place they occupied was not necessarily, not someone else for that reason. It was owned by someone else, if you might say so. And I think that history might not be easily comparable to how Ethiopia is, because uh, to start with, Ethiopia was Ethiopia. Like, to Eritrea, Ethiopia, and all that stuff was all one. Throughout history, there are connections that we had. Although there are conflicts that we've had, it is also a shared history. There is enough of it to sort of consider those people to be together, to have a shared common goal. And in that sense, I feel that this kind of approach, this kind of perspective, where you're protective, you're defensive, rather than looking out for a solution aside from conflict. And in that sense, I mean, um, the volatile conflict. I mean, in the sense of where there is danger, or where there is violence in it. So I feel that is the last resort. In my opinion, that's how I feel about it. It's the last resort to resolving where we are now. And it's much more dangerous to resort to that as well, than having to look at other options before getting to that point, because it's the same cyclic thing that we've been doing in Ethiopia, in Africa, you might say as well, to sort of, yeah, uh, I get the concept. It's much different being defensive for your people, but the action in the end is sort of the same. It's, I defend my own people, and then the rest, can go to hell, whatever. Doesn't really matter. And then it goes cyclical. Whenever the other has some more power, then they defend their own people, and it becomes a bit more cyclical. So it's kind of worrisome in that sense, where there is no resolution to this kind of a situation, and it's more a cause than a solution to this problem, to this situation that we're in. And in that, I think perhaps it's important to define that term, protecting the people, to protect your people, in terms of how can I strengthen the people, in terms of like, it can be economical, it can be any other forms, but to strengthen the foundations of those people, not necessarily to strengthen them for fight, to defend in that sense, but to have a strength in terms of the people, rather than readiness for conflict. Yeah, that's my view.
You guys are raising a very beautiful point. I'm enjoying it.
Harif.
I mean, by the way, I feel very good to have participated in. This is like my first podcast. I've never attended any kind of virtual meeting. So the point is, the bigger picture is like us hanging out together, discussing ideas. Earlier, I was telling to Take when he was an analyst, I used to meet him regular, and we talk about deeply about what's going on, because we share a lot of pain and mindsets. And there was other people who have abandoned the country due to the current situation. So currently, I'm running out of friends in the city, and even like we may differ. My point, like we may have different opinion, but the point is us hanging out, and we should see the big picture always. Like we can't focus on the difference of uh, opinions and ideas. What matters is like exchanging. So let's see it from I see it from that perspective. When it comes to the points on discussion, like like I would like to start by Kasanet's question, like, could it have been avoided if you were like, is it enough being militarily strong? Does it guarantee like conflict avoidance? Well, I I mean, in my thought process, um, like Eritreans, they have been like for the couple of 2 or 3 decades, they have been a sworn enemy of the EPRDF government. Let's put it that way, so that we agree. If we can say Ethiopia, but like they were a sworn enemy, the Shabia and the TPLF specifically. But the Eritreans, they never watch, they never go to war until the TPLFs are until they get a good opportunity to attack the TPLF. They weren't ready for a war. So this tells you, because the TPLF was militarily strong, and there was no war. There was no peace, no war situation. At least that's better than what's currently having. So yeah, if you're strong, nobody's ready to die unless they are. Everything is calculated, like everything is calculated. Even like Tigray had like some 56 or something generals. I heard that it was like a big worrisome for Isaias Afwerki. Is he tried to go to war with with a region that have 56 generals? Even the enemy thinks this much. By the way, when they go to war, everything is calculated. So yeah, if Tigray was armed and strong, there wouldn't be a war unless Tigray want it. Like, unless both parts want it, unless both parties are pushed. The Tigray war or the Tigray genocide happened because it was a number calculation, it was a diplomatic calculation, it was an economic calculation, it was a geographic calculation. Even to the extent Tigray, if you keep Tigray under 360-degree complete siege, it will kneel. For that matter, it's it's like a small region, by the way, but its history is big, by the way. Its history is big, and the enemy know that. I feel bad for using the word the enemy too many times. Anyway, the enemy is ignorance, actually. Like, but if you're like militarily armed and like, we haven't seen a war after the Cold War between the US and the Russians, because if they go to war, it's devastating for both of them. Like, if I and you have a gun, we wouldn't go to war. We wouldn't shoot each other because we don't want to die. Like, nobody wants to die. But if I have a gun and I make sure you don't have a gun, of course I will take advantage. Most wars, they don't have legit cause, by the way. It's like taking advantage of the weak, taking advantage of the victim. And I'm a huge advocate of being strong. And by the way, when I say self-protection, I mean, I'm not saying like, let's all be armed, let's go to, let's take military training or something. I'm not saying let's be ready for a war, but what I'm saying is, by being self-protection, it could be like, in terms of idea, you might win. By the way, let me tell you some funny stuff. Like, the war started something between October and November, like October 24 or something. So I hung out with a group of Tagaro, nationalist Tagaro, diehard Tagaro. And as much as I love these people, the idea that we discussed during a lunchtime, which I remember very clear and vivid, I still remember it. And I said, let's give them the places they claim is ours. Let's give them Mulkai. Let's give them Raya. If they think it's theirs, let's avoid a war. Because, like, war is too costly in my life. Even I may be young, but like I have seen like the Eritrean war, tens of thousands died for nothing. By the way, we didn't get the place, but we didn't get any kind of like Tigray become a periphery in terms of economy, in terms of different aspects. Like, so I know there is no gain from a war. So what I said is like, as Tagar, we are a little bit like, sort of, we have experienced peace for the last 3 decades. We've been achieving some remarkable milestones in terms of education, in terms of economy, in terms of a lot of things. But there are other people who want to prove that we aren't hero because of the Derg, we defeat their generation. That kind of, by the way, the toxic nature of civil war is like, like you beat your own brother and it's gonna, like someday it will come to you. So like there are people, by the way, there was no legit enough cause to go to this kind of to a war at this level, at this scale. Most people go to war. If you ask any Ethiopian soldiers, they go to war because they were like angry about the TPLF defeat their generation, by the way, which is complete nonsense, by the way, complete nonsense. So I said we're like a little bit civilized. We're like in the hype of Sahandarta, the STV, the using Magala. They are like get used to a comfortable life. They were like people like Marhawi were like on a different ambition, on a different journey. I think I can say same thing with Kasana, who is a limited information I have. So we weren't ready for a war. We were 100% sure no war is coming anymore, especially after TPLF handed power to the Oromo struggle. We were so sure. But do you know what the Tigrayan friends say to me? Over our dead body, we will not give them even a portion of a land, let alone Walkait or Raya. And for me, it was a matter of simple calculation. Like, if we go to war, we might lose a lot. But if we give them this kind of land, maybe when this, bad negative energy, political negative energy passes, we might sit and talk that this is our land. We might buy time, we might avoid war. But of course, like, will the enemy stop at that point? That's another question. But like, I wasn't ready for a war at that time, and they all laugh at me. But now I think they kind of regret it because they didn't expect this to happen. Anyway, when I say self-protection, I mean like in terms of outsmarting. Like at that time, let's sit and talk. What is the main issue? Like, we can't afford war. We are brothers. Even if you go to war, it's going to be civil war. There is no actual reason to go to war. We will do any kind of talks, all kind of compromise, all kind of discussions to avoid this war. Let's live together peacefully. Let's strive. The painful consequence of not being able to ready for a war is like you can be, a victim of proxy war. By the way, I don't think Abiy was ready for all this kind of. I don't think he have meditated all these war issues, genocide issues. I don't think so. Like, there are other conflict entrepreneurs who push him into this level. Of course, he was a good student. He was very sharp. He do exactly what the stakeholders of his power ordered him to do or advised him to do. But like, I would like to be honest. There was less chance of saving this war, but like we were also like sort of like bragging, like in a way. Anyway, like my friends whom I think is well read, highly educated, high caliber, they said we won't give them a portion of land over our dead body. You can't achieve civilization or development, this kind of mindset. So by self-protection, it could be military. Yes, you should be ready. And I feel if we were ready, it would be good for the Amara people. It would be good for the Oromo people. It would be good for the Eritreans because like now they are a genocide, a bad history is at their hand. I'm sure if we survive this war, someday someone, when they get time, they will go for a revenge, of course. which is not good. Like, look what's happening to us. Like, the grudge that's built during the defeat of a Derg has grown to a complete genocide, a complete siege, like multi-layered, unheard of genocide. The people of Tigray has passing through, like, like painful experience, hard to explain. Anyway, when it comes to Mary, yes. By the way, let's be pragmatic, Mary. Like, by the way, like, we should know how the world works and we should act accordingly. Like, we're not saints, we're not Buddhist monks, we're not gonna preach like, let's instill some good ideas and good will prevail in the world. Yes, the world is a very dirty place, and most of the seeds are, like destructive seeds are. That's how the world works. So Astagar, we failed from understanding how the world works, and we didn't adjust ourselves in this according to this, and thus we are a victim of genocide. So the reason why we are a victim is because, well, it's our failure. Like, we should take responsibility. We didn't figure out how the world works, we didn't act accordingly, and, like, yes, like, for example, there is no enough reason to go to this war. By the way, it was like a simple bad seed planted, grown, and at the end it became a full-fledged genocide. Even, like, if you ask the Ethiopians tomorrow, they don't even give you enough reason why they did this. By the way, they feel bad. They are, like, in a sort of hype currently. So yeah, I understand, like, certain ideas influence. That's why the Jewish people, like I stated earlier, they banned Kanye West from Twitter, from Instagram, because they know, like, these kind of seeds are dangerous. This is how Hitler is created. So we should be very cautious, and let's not underestimate uh, uh, how the world works, or how small ideas eventually became a source of genocide. So these are my points. Thank you.
It was a really nice discussion. Thank you, Zena, for joining us. I hope you will join us again next time as well. I know, like, أكيد هذه. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Make sure to share it for others as well, and then let them know that we're discussing this so they can join our discussion and then share ideas. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. See you until then. Bye.